So I often hear like my friends or other people say they read something online or they read something in a magazine and it was all about giving up dairy and it helped like either their skin or their health condition. Is there anything true in that at all?
To be honest, short version of this story, no. Long version of the story, to put some legs on it and to explain it a little bit better, a general rule of thumb would be it's a red flag if anyone is just suggesting you cut out an entire food group. Not just dairy, but if someone suggests carbohydrates, fats, proteins, that should be a red flag to think, I'm not so sure about this. So whilst there are many people who are, I suppose, well-intentioned, they are unfortunately misguided if the advice is straight up remove dairy from your diet. There are really very few indications where that's appropriate to do so, and before you would ever consider taking an action like that, it's really important to talk to a GP or a dietitian, probably both to be perfectly honest, because if we look at Irish diets, dairy makes up a pretty decent contributor to protein intakes, to calcium, to vitamin D, to a bunch of our B vitamins, phosphorus, etc. If that's just straight up removed, there is the potential for there to be nutrient deficiencies or dietary adequacy issues. So it's never just as simple as removing dairy is a panacea to all of your problems.
And again, there, the importance of a credible source of this kind of information. So like at the minute, like we're also conscious about maintaining a healthy weight. Like, is dairy fattening?
This is something I get asked a lot, and people are generally very confused about this topic. The brass tacks to begin with, weight loss or gain is all down to the calories you consume versus the calories that you burn. So if you consume more calories than you expend, you store that as energy, turns into a little bit of fat, and you gain weight. Individual food items have no real bearing over that. Think bigger picture. So people make hundreds of food-based decisions a week. Whether you drink a glass of full-fat milk or a Greek yogurt is fairly inconsequential to weight loss. It's all down to calorie balance. And I suppose just to outline it for you for some context, maybe it's down to the phrasing and how people relate to that phrasing. So full-fat milk is understandably, for I suppose someone who isn't a dietitian or a healthcare professional, possibly confusing. Full fat milk, just to clarify, is not full of fat. Per 100 ml there's about 3.5 grams of fat. If you compare that to a glass of semi-skimmed milk, there's about 1.4 grams of fat. It's practically only about 18 calories of a difference. That's not a lot. For weight loss purposes, that's never where we would start to help someone see a little bit of progress.
That's really good to know that like dairy is relatively low in fat, and particularly milk there. But what if we'll say like if someone is intolerant to the lactose that is found in milk? Do they have to avoid it at all costs, or what can they do?
Great question, Sinead. So the answer is almost certainly not. Lactose intolerance exists at a 4 to 5% prevalence rate in Ireland, according to EFSA. And when we look at people with lactose intolerant, we know that lactose intolerance exists more or less on a spectrum. Some can tolerate more, some can tolerate less. Most people with lactose intolerance can tolerate around 12 to 15 grams of lactose. So if we're looking at what does that actually mean if you're trying to select portions and see what you can and cannot have, if we have a 200 ml glass of milk, for example, which is a portion, that'll have around 9 to 10 grams of lactose in it. If we then maybe look at a portion of yogurt, 125 gram portion of yogurt, that has around 5.9. It'll always have less than 6 grams of lactose in it. And if we then look at a portion of hard cheese like your cheddars, so a 25 gram portion of that has 0.03 grams of lactose, so it's almost a negligible amount. Bearing that in mind, it's pretty clear that if you have lactose intolerance, there's a great chance you'll be able to freely include items such as cheese and yogurts in your diet. It's not necessarily a given that you need to avoid milk. However, if you do find it hard in your stomach, you can go for the lactose-free milk options, which give you all of the benefits of milk, including the high biological value protein, the iodine, the B vitamins, just without the stomach ache. So it's actually a very manageable condition to have.
That's really interesting, because I would have thought like avoid at all costs if you had that health condition. For further information, tips and recipes, go to ndc.ie or @ndc_ie on social media.